Hey folks, welcome to the channel. So, what I thought I'd do is a quick demo on how to set up an AWS Free Tier account. So the first question is, what's an AWS Free Tier account? So let me open up a browser here. We'll go out to aws.amazon.com. We'll do a /free at the end. There we go. All right, so let's talk about what AWS Free Tier is. Whenever you set up a brand new AWS account, there are free services available. Some of them are available for the first year that you use this AWS account. Some are free always. And then others are free just temporarily. Why would I do this? Well, number one, to get some hands-on. If you are studying for an AWS certification, this is something worth doing. Get some hands-on. I learn by doing. And I suggest you do the same. Now, when we look at what we get for free tier, let's filter this out by 12 months free. What do you get free for the first year? I love this. You get 750 hours per month of an EC2, T2 micro, or T3 micro instance, depending on the regions that it's available in. Well, that's cool. So that's basically a free web server, right? If you want to run WordPress or something like that, you can run it on here, and it works. It's a great demo environment. In fact, we'll do a demo a little bit later on in our series where we actually build some EC2 instances. You also get your first year's 5 gigs a month of storage, an S3 free. Amazon Relational Database Service for MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, or SQL Server. So there are lots of cool things that you get here. We see the API gateway usage, Amazon OpenSearch Service, EFS, EBS, Amazon Connect usage, lots and lots of services that are free for the first year. The other thing that you get are always free levels. So if you want to start using things like Code Whisperer, AWS Lambda, Simple Notification Service, CloudWatch, CloudFront, Cognito, Simple Queuing Service. All of these services have free tier that you have to get past a certain amount of usage every month before you get charged. So this is great. So all you have to do is set up your AWS account. You know, I love doing labs, and I love using things like Skill Builder to do labs and learn and see lectures. And I'll put a link in the comments for links to Skill Builder and where there are lots of free courses and paid courses on AWS. But I also like to get some hands-on. So all you have to do is create an AWS account. What do I need to do this? Well, let's go ahead and do one together. First thing that you need to do is specify a root user email account. Okay, so I'm going to put in an email address here. I'm not going to share it with y'all, but I'm going to. Okay, and then I'm going to give a name to my account. That's Gmail. And then I have to verify my email address. And now I've got an email verification that I'm going to have to put in my verification code. So let me check my email account in another window here. And I will verify that. Okay, great. So now I have to put in a root user password. So I'm going to go ahead and use a strong password, username, my account information, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in my contact information. I've read the customer agreement, and then I'm going to continue on. Next up, how am I going to pay for this thing? I thought you said it was free, Ted. You know, I am going to do free tier usage, but one of the cool things about AWS is that I am not limited to free tier. What do I mean by that? This is a production account inside of AWS that I can go ahead and build whatever I want. Now, we're going to go ahead and set up a budget on this, you know, so I get alerted if anything goes over, I don't know, $1 a month on this account. But, okay, so I've got my contact info in, my credit card number in. I'm going to confirm my identity. with the text message. And if I can read these characters, see how I do here. All right, cool. So I should have a text message. Great, got my text message in. I confirm my identity. And now I get to choose a support plan. So this is my free account. I'm going to use basic support. Now, if I needed help with this account, I could, and I get, self-service access to AWS resources. I have access for billing and account issues. So if there's a charge I don't think I should have on my account, I've got billing access. But if I need technical support, I could look at developer support. Okay. And then if I were actually running this account for a business and I was going into production, I'd probably want business support. Okay. Where I'd have 24/7 tech support via phone. Okay. But I can deal with email access to AWS during business hours and basic support while I'm starting out. I'm free. I still have a health dashboard, and I also have access to Trusted Advisor. I can change this at any time, so I can upgrade or downgrade these plans. Okay, so we'll start here free. We're doing free tier. So I've got my basic support. I'm going to complete my sign up. And now I just signed up. Okay, I can tell some more about myself if I want to, and I would, if this were my first account, I would probably fill out this. There's some intro videos here, which are really helpful as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the AWS Management Console. And now I'm in as my root user. Great, I've got access to everything inside of AWS. I've got a little tour here showing me the AWS Management Console. And now what do I do? Let's take a tour around the AWS Management Console. And I'll show you a couple things here. And then we'll also look at a couple different interfaces and some things that you should really do when you first set up your AWS account. So I'm into the Management Console. If I click View All Services, I can see I've got access to over 200 services in AWS. So if I wanted to create, I don't know, an EC2 instance, I can click on EC2. Now, whenever I want to get back to that main screen, I can just click on AWS, and it brings me back to this main screen in the Management Console. Now, there are a couple of things that I like to mention about this user that I have. So I can see a few things here. Now, number one, for services, I'm going to use this search window. I like this View All Services icon, but typically from the console home, I'm going to type in the service I'm looking for. So if I were looking for billing and cost management, great, I could go right there. And we could see that I don't have any data available because this is a brand new account. Okay, let's see, what can I do? Here's bills, payments, credits. What I think I should do is I'm going to start by creating a user that I can use for day-to-day operation of this account. The other thing that I want to do is I want to turn on multi-factor authentication for my root user. These are two things from a security point of view we really want to do first thing when we set up an account. So let's start with MFA. I'm going to go out to Identity and Access Management. And I can see security recommendations right here. It says, we'll blow the screen up a little bit here. Add MFA for the root user. Okay, yeah, let's add multi-factor authentication. Okay, so how do I want to authenticate? I can create a passkey on this device, or I could use another device. So let's say I'm going to create a passkey using the fingerprint sensor on my Mac or an iPhone. I'm using my Mac, so I'll put my fingerprint right on the Mac, right there. Now I've got my account details. I've got a passkey, so I can use In this case, I'm using the fingerprint identifier on my Mac to identify my account. That's great. I'm all set. I've got a multi-factor authentication device. Now, I could use other things. I could use things like Google Authenticator if I wanted to. So I've locked down my root account here by using MFA. What does that mean, multi-factor authentication? Well, that means besides providing a username and a password, so it's also authenticating that I have a device with me that is trusted. Now, the other thing about our accounts, we typically don't want to use the root account for day-to-day interaction. These have, superpowers on the account. But one thing that I want to mention here is that every account is identified by a 12-digit number up here. So I have an account ID. Okay, so I want to be careful with these. I don't really care that an account ID gets out in the wild, but what I do care about for the account ID are things called access keys. You never, ever, 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 ever want to create an access key for the root user. You should create a separate user that may have admin access that gets granted access keys. So what I'm going to do for this account, since this is a demo account, I'm going to create another user. So I'm in Identity and Access Management. I'm going to create a user, and I'm going to call this user, I don't know, day to day. This is going to be my day-to-day user. And I can give this user access to the AWS Management Console. Okay, and it says, we recommend you use Identity Center to provide console access to a person. Okay, this is the recommended method. If I were a business and I had Active Directory, and I already had my users managed inside of some other directory service, this is a no-brainer to use. Because I've already got a place where I manage users. Why do I want a second place to manage users? So Identity Center is probably the safest bet to centrally manage users. But this is just my demo account. I'm going to create what we call an IAM, or Identity and Access Management user. So this is going to give me credentials that I can put locally on my desktop that I can use to access this account when I'm using things like Visual Studio Code, when I'm using the command line interface. And these credentials that I'm going to use with this IAM user are different than this console password that I'm creating. So I'm going to go ahead and create a password for this user. I'm not going to show the password. And I can also force my user to create a new password at next sign-in. Okay, so I'm going to go to click Next. And then what is this user called day-to-day going to be able to do in this account? I'm going to add them to a group. Well, I don't have a group, but I should create a group that has maybe admin rights. Now, we can give permissions directly to the user, but a best practice is building groups and assigning permissions to the groups. So that way, if I add other admins, I can just add them to the group, and it's easy to manage policies or access rights. Okay, so right at the top here, as I see a create user group, give it a name, admin, and then I have all of these permission policies. There's 957 of them pre-built for me. So these are AWS managed policies, and they are either by how you're going to access, well, let me see how I want to say this. They're either by job function, as we see up here, or by service and an aspect of that service. Like maybe I'm an API gateway administrator. Maybe I need read-only access to certain credentials. Maybe I need access just to be able to build EC2 and manage EC2. So we can go through and we can look at these various policies. We can have multiple policies assigned to a user. Okay, so I'm going to make this user. This is my first user in the account. They're an admin, so I'm creating my admin group with administrator access. What do these policies look like? Well, you can open up and take a look. They're written in JavaScript object notation. Okay, JSON. Okay, and all this is a series of keys and values. Okay, and I think of JSON as a markup language that is meant to be both machine and human readable. So if I look at this, I see there's a version, and this version here says the syntax hasn't changed since 2012. Now, AWS's APIs have changed. They've continued to add APIs and modify them, but this format hasn't changed since 2012. Okay, my effect is an allow, and my effect could either be an allow or a deny. And then I have two action. I've got one action here. That is everything. So is it one action? Well, what I really have here is an action that says allow all actions because I'm using a wildcard. I have this asterisk here as a wildcard. What are we allowing every action to? Every resource. Okay, that's a simple policy. It's probably the simplest one you'll ever see because it's just wildcarded out. If we look at other policies, they're going to be a little bit more complex. So I'm creating this admin group. I've added my user to it, or haven't added my user to it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add the user to the group when I hit next here. I'll create the user. And now I have an admin user with a console sign-in. And their username is day-to-day. And here's their console password. I'm not going to show it, though. We now have two users in our account. We have our AWS root user that we created when we created the account. And then we have an identity and access management user that we gave admin access to. Before we go farther, let's talk about some best practices for that root user account. Number one, don't use your root user access key for anything unless it is absolutely unavoidable. In fact, don't give access keys to your root user. You always want to turn on MFA or multi-factor authentication for your root users, as well as for your IAM users. Never, ever share your root user or your IAM user's credentials with anyone for anything. Now, as we build new users, one principle that we want to follow is implementing least privilege access. Okay, and what that really means is that we only want to give our users access to the services and resources that they need to do their job. We want to use a very robust password policy. Now, one of the things the root user can do that the IAM users can't do is billing. So in our next step, we're going to go ahead and build some budgets with the root user account. We're logged in as the root user, and we've navigated over to billing and cost management. I'm going to scroll down here on the left to budgets, and I'm going to create a budget. So I could use a template, and we could just set a zero spend budget. Okay, that's right here. Create a budget that notifies you once your spending exceeds a penny, which is above the AWS Free Tier limit. That's good. My zero spend budget. I'm going to put my email in here. And we could, put multiple email addresses in here if we wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create that budget. And there's my zero spend budget. So I'm all set. I'm ready to work. We can create additional budgets, though. Maybe I want to know, I know I'm going to spend more than a penny because I like playing with stuff that isn't necessarily free. It may just be for 10 minutes that I'm running certain things, so it may cost me pennies or dollars. But we could go ahead and create a second budget. I'm going to create a monthly cost budget. And I'm going to say that if my budget goes over $10, let's say on the free tier, send me an email as well. Okay, cool. And I can change that later on. One thing that I'll say as a tip is in your budget names, don't put dollar amounts because you can always change your dollar amounts. Maybe I get my monthly cost budget I want to change it to $20 a month. I don't want to call it my $10 a month budget. Okay, because I may change that budget later on. But yeah, you can have multiple budgets here. So we've done a few things here. Turn off my alarm there. We've done a few things here. We set up an AWS account. And we're going to be using free tier. So we also did a couple security things. We set up multi-factor authentication for the root user, and we set up an IAM user for day-to-day usage of the account. Okay. We also then came back in as the root user and set up budgets so that we will know when we go over a penny, and in my case, over $10 a month here. I hope this was helpful. And if you like this video, go ahead and click the like button. Feel free to subscribe and hit the little bell to be notified when we have new episodes out. I'm looking forward in the future here to do a series on infrastructure as code. And I wanted to make sure that everyone has a free tier account so you can build with me as we go through the examples. Anyway, so I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you the next time.